We don't always know, right away, why a story stays with us. Sometimes it's not the volume of what happened, but the quiet precision of it. This one began with a family lunch that was never meant to be a meal. It was meant to be a reckoning. Rowan Pierce works with numbers for a living, but what her family asked her to carry had nothing to do with math. It had everything to do with control. This is where she begins. I knew something was wrong the moment I sat down. No one asked how the drive was. No one commented on the weather or the traffic. My father didn't even look at me. He just slid a thick ledger across the table, the cover bent and darkened with old stains, like it had lived its whole life being handled too hard. You owe this family $465,000. That was it. No hello. No easing into it. My mother folded her hands as if she were about to pray. My brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, already relaxed. They'd rehearsed this. I glanced down at the ledger. The pages were dense with handwriting, columns and totals that looked official if you didn't stare too long. For Evan, my father added. For what he lost. My mother nodded, eyes glassy. It's a blood debt, Rowan. You know that. I waited a second before answering. Not because I was shocked, because I needed to hear the rest. We figured out a clean way to handle it, she went on. $7,100 a month. Automatic. No stress for you. And for how long? I asked. My father finally looked up. As long as it takes. Evan smirked, not wide. Just enough to say he was safe. If you refuse, my mother said softly, you're choosing not to be part of this family anymore. The room felt smaller after that. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I felt that familiar click in my chest, the one that happens at work when a report doesn't reconcile, when the numbers tell you someone is lying. I nodded once. I agree. They all froze. I agree that debts should be paid. My father narrowed his eyes. You're not going to fight this before I sign anything. I said, I need to hear it again. Hear what? Evan asked. That night. I said, turning toward him. The alley. Tell it the way you always do. He straightened. Pleased. You mean how I stepped in front of you. That's the one. As Evan started talking, my mother reached for her napkin. My father watched him like a proud manager. I set my phone face down on the table, my thumb resting on the screen, and listened. There was a moment then, a brief one, where everyone in the room believed the story would end the way it always had. That belief would not survive the afternoon. We'll pause here. Just long enough to say this quietly, some families don't raise children. They raise accounts. Evan kept talking, his voice steady, confident, practiced. And I let him. Evan didn't hesitate. He rolled his shoulders like he was settling into a familiar chair. We were walking back from the store. He began, voice steady. It was late. Too quiet. My mother's fingers tightened around her napkin. I saw them first. Evan continued. 3 guys hanging back. I knew something was off. My father nodded once, slow and approving. So I stepped in front of Rowan. Evan went on, told her to run, told her not to look back. He paused, just long enough to let the room lean in. They came at me fast. One of them swung a pipe. I felt it hit my arm. I went down, but I kept yelling at her to keep running. My mother let out a soft sound, somewhere between a breath and a sob. You almost died, she murmured. Evan shrugged. Modest. I'd do it again. I watched his hands as he spoke. Clean nails. No shaking. He told it the way you tell something you've practiced in front of a mirror. That's what a brother does, he added. I didn't look at him. I looked at my father. He was smiling, just slightly, like a man listening to a story that confirmed everything he'd ever believed. The ledger sat between us, open now. I could see totals circled in thick ink, notes in the margins, years of justification. Evan leaned back again, finished. That's the night, he said. That's why we're here. I nodded once, slowly. You took the hit. Yeah, Evan replied. All of it. The room went quiet. Not awkward quiet. Expectant quiet. For a moment, everyone seemed to be waiting for something from me. A thank you, an apology, a signature. We noticed then how still she was, how carefully she chose not to fill the silence. I reached for my glass of water and took a small sip. My hand didn't shake. You really are a hero, I said, keeping my voice even. Evan smiled. Not big, comfortable. My thumb pressed lightly against my phone. Good, my father said. Now that we're all clear, I set the glass down. The sound was soft, but it cut through the room. Before we talk about payments, I said, there's just one more thing. They all looked at me, and I let the quiet stretch, just a little longer than they liked. Evan's voice faded into the background, like a radio left on in another room. I was still sitting at the table, but my body wasn't there anymore. It never is when he tells that story. I was 14 that night. I remember the cold more than anything, not the sharp kind, the damp kind that sinks into your shoes and stays there. We were walking back from the corner store, arguing about nothing. He was annoyed I'd asked him to come with me. I saw the shadows when he did. Evan stopped walking so suddenly I bumped into him. Rowan, he hissed, panic already in his voice. Before I could say anything, his hands were on my shoulders, hard. He shoved me forward, toward the mouth of the alley. Take her, he yelled over his shoulder. She's the one you want. Then he ran, not a stumble, not hesitation. He sprinted, arms pumping, breath already breaking. I froze. Not because I was brave, because my body didn't know what to do with what had just happened. The men laughed. One of them shook his head. Your brother's a rat, he said, almost amused. They didn't touch me. They chased Evan instead. Running made it fun. They caught him 2 blocks down, where the streetlights thinned out. I heard him crying before I heard anything else. The sound carried. I didn't follow. I didn't scream. I stood there until someone's porch light flicked on, and the alley didn't feel so dark anymore. Back at the table, Evan was still talking, still finishing the version where he stood tall. It hurt like hell, he was saying, but I'd do it again. My mother reached for his arm, fingers brushing the spot he always rubs when he wants sympathy. You protected her, she whispered. My father exhaled through his nose, satisfied. I looked at Evan, really looked at him. He wasn't shaking. His eyes weren't darting. He looked proud. Something tightened in my chest. Not anger. Something quieter. He'd told this story so many times. He believed it. We noticed how the room seemed to tilt toward him, how the others leaned in without realizing it. You really are a hero, I said. Evan's mouth curved up. Damn right! I reached forward and tapped my phone. The screen went dark. The sound was small, barely anything, but it landed. My father cleared his throat. So, he began, reaching for the envelope under the table. Now that we're aligned, I didn't look at the envelope. I kept my eyes on Evan. You took that beating all by yourself, I said. Slow, careful. He nodded. Every bit of it. I let a second pass. Then another. Good, I replied. That's exactly what I needed to hear. The envelope slid out from under the table. My father placed it beside the ledger, tapping it once with his knuckle. Like that settled things. Everything's in there, he said. We kept it simple. My mother leaned closer. It's just paperwork. Rowan, you won't even have to think about it after today. Evan stayed quiet now. He'd already done his part. The story, the confirmation. He watched me the way someone watches a door they expect to open. I didn't reach for the envelope. I folded my hands in my lap instead and took a slow breath through my nose. I can't sign this, I said. The air shifted. My father's jaw tightened. You just agreed. I agreed that debts should be paid. I kept my voice level. Not that I'd signed something I haven't finished understanding. My mother frowned. We explained it. You explained the story. I said, not the structure. The envelope stayed where it was, untouched. My father stared at it, then back at me. What structure do you think you need, the part where my name disappears? I replied, the part where control moves. Evan shifted in his chair. You're overthinking it. I smiled at him. Not warm, just precise. I do that for a living. Silence crept back in. Not the dramatic kind, the careful kind. The kind where people realize the ground isn't as solid as they thought. We noticed how no one interrupted her then, how even the smallest movements stopped. My father pushed his chair back an inch. You don't trust us. I trust patterns, I said, and this one is very familiar. My mother reached for my hand. Her palm was warm, slightly damp. Sweetheart, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I pulled my hand away gently. I'm not. I glanced at the envelope again, then at the ledger, the ink, the totals, the confidence. There's something you should know before this goes any further, I added, about the thing you're trying to secure. My father leaned forward. What thing? I met his eyes. The asset. Another pause. Longer this time. It isn't where you think it is anymore. No one spoke. And for the first time that afternoon, I felt the room tip in my direction. My father was still staring at me when I let the silence stretch. He didn't like silence unless he controlled it. I didn't wake up to this idea today, I said. This meeting didn't surprise me. My mother's eyebrows lifted. What does that mean? It means I knew you were reaching for me before you asked. Evan scoffed. You're imagining things. 3 weeks ago. I continued. My phone lit up at 2 a.m. I didn't pull it out. I didn't need to. I could see the screen in my head the way you remember bad news. Bright. Too clear? A high-risk loan inquiry. I said. $85,000. Filed under my name. My father leaned back. So it wasn't the amount that caught my attention. It was the location. My mother shifted. The chair legs scraped softly against the floor. The application came from this house. I added, same network, same address. Evan laughed once, sharp. That's not possible. It took me about 10 minutes to see the pattern. I said, credit cards, personal loans, a draft authorization to move funds. You weren't asking for help. You were testing doors. My father's voice hardened. You're accusing us of stealing. I'm describing behavior. I replied, the kind I get paid to find. The envelope suddenly felt heavier just sitting there. My mother pushed it closer again, like proximity could force a decision. We were trying to protect the family, she said. Evan needed help. You tried to empty me out, I said, quietly. Evan's foot bounced under the table. He wouldn't look at me now. I took a breath, slow, the way I do when I'm walking someone through evidence. Most people call the police when they see smoke. I don't. My father frowned. What do you do? I wait. I said, because smoke isn't proof, intent is. My mother shook her head. This is paranoid. So is forging access, I said. But it happens every day. The room felt tight, like someone had closed a window without telling anyone. We could feel how the tone changed there, how the confidence drained and left something raw behind. I let the calls go to voicemail. I went on. I let you plan this lunch. I let you believe I was still in the dark. My father stood abruptly, chair legs screeching. Sit down. I didn't move. You wanted me cornered, guilt on one side, paper on the other. He glared. And you think you're clever enough to outmaneuver us? I didn't need to be clever, I said. I needed you to bring me the paperwork. My mother's hand trembled as she rested it on the envelope. You're tearing this family apart. I shook my head. I'm showing you where the cracks already were. Evan finally looked up. His face had gone pale. You knew all this before today. Yes, I said. That's why I'm calm. No one spoke after that, not for a while, and in that quiet, I could tell they were all starting to realize the same thing. They hadn't invited me to negotiate. They'd invited me to sign. And I wasn't going to. My father was the first to speak again. His voice came out louder than it needed to be. You think you can scare us with paperwork? I'm not trying to scare anyone, I replied. I'm explaining why this ends here. He leaned forward, palms flat on the table. You still have the house. That's where you're wrong. My mother inhaled sharply. Rowan. The townhouse in Marin. I continued, the one you've been circling around without saying its name. Evan's head snapped up. You wouldn't. I already did. The words didn't land all at once. They scattered. My father stared, then laughed, once, like he'd misheard. You sold it, he said. That's impossible. It closed 2 days ago. My mother pushed back from the table. Her chair bumped the wall. That house is worth over $1 million. $1,750,000. I said. That was the purchase price. The room went very still. You can't just sell it. My father snapped. That equity belongs to this family. It never did. I replied. My name was on the deed. My name was on the mortgage. Evan rubbed his face with both hands. Where's the money? Protected. I said, in an irrevocable trust. My father's face changed then. Not anger. Something closer to fear. You locked it away, he said. Yes. For how long? My mother asked. Voice thin, permanently. The ledger slid slightly as my father's fist came down on the table. Not hard. Controlled. You're destroying everything. I'm stepping out of it, I said. He stood, chair scraping loud against the floor. We needed that equity. You needed cash flow, I said. To cover Evan's losses. Evan looked up, startled. What losses? My father waved a hand. Not now. But it was already too late. Evan's mouth tightened. He stared at the ledger like it might explain something. We could hear how the air shifted again, how the story began to fray at the edges. My mother reached for me, stopping short. We did this for the family. You did this for control, I said. The house was leverage. That's why you pushed the paperwork. My father paced once, then stopped in front of me. You still owe us. For what? I asked quietly. For what he gave up. My mother said. For his pain. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Just 1 page. The equity is gone, I said. And before we go any further, you should know something else. My father's eyes flicked to the paper. What? The money you're asking for. I said. It was already paid. Silence hit the room like a held breath. My father scoffed. That's a lie. I unfolded the page and set it beside the ledger. It isn't. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Evan leaned forward, squinting at the numbers. I stayed where I was, hands resting on the table. $465,000. I said, paid in full, years ago. No one spoke. And for the first time since I'd walked in, I could see it clearly on their faces. They hadn't lost control by accident. They'd lost it because they'd been counting on something that no longer existed. My father reached for the paper like it might bite him. He didn't pick it up. He hovered, then pulled his hand back. You're confused, he said. That number doesn't mean what you think it means. It means the claim was paid. I replied. All of it. My mother's voice came out thin. That was compensation. Yes, I said, which means the bill was settled. Evan leaned closer, squinting at the page. That's our name. It's yours as beneficiary. I told him. Filed by Mom and Dad, 11 years ago. He blinked. Once. Then again. They already paid. No one answered him. My father straightened. We paid plenty out of pocket. The records don't show that. I said, they show the money came in, then it went out. My mother shook her head hard. You can't prove how it was spent. I don't need to, I said. The bank statements do. Evan's foot stopped bouncing. He stared at the ledger, then back at the paper. If this was paid, he said slowly. Then what was I breaking my arm for? My father snapped. Don't start. Evan didn't look away. You told me we were drowning. You were, my mother said. After. The word hung there. After. We could feel how that landed, how the room seemed to tilt toward him for the first time. You used it, Evan said. Not angry. Just flat, didn't you? My father's face darkened. That's enough. I folded the paper once. Then again. Double billing a settled claim isn't a misunderstanding. I said, it's fraud. My mother's eyes flashed. You're threatening us. I'm explaining consequences. I replied, there's a difference. My father slammed his palm on the table. The glasses rattled. You ungrateful, I stood. The chair legs scraped loud against the floor. I'm leaving. My mother reached out. Rowan, please. I shook my head. This ends now. My father moved fast. Too fast. He stepped between me and the door, arm out. You're not going anywhere with that. The air went sharp. My chest tightened, but my voice didn't change. Move. He didn't. We noticed the moment then, the way everything narrowed to the space between her and the door. I lifted my phone, screen facing him. The call's been live for 3 minutes. He froze. You admitted the claim. I continued. You blocked the exit, from somewhere outside. Faint at first, a siren cut through the quiet. My father's shoulders sagged, just a little. I stepped around him and reached for the lock. The deadbolt turned with a dry click. My father's hand stayed on it a second longer than it needed to, like he was reminding himself it was there. You don't leave, he said, low and steady, until you remember who paid for your childhood. My mother made a small sound behind him. Evan didn't move. I took one step back, just enough space to breathe. Opened the door. He shook his head. Not with that phone. I lifted it a little higher so he could see the screen. The timer kept running. No alerts, no drama. Just time moving forward. From the speaker, a calm voice broke through. Ma'am, are you being prevented from leaving your location? Yes, I said. He's standing between me and the door. My father's jaw tightened. He didn't look at the phone. He stared at me instead. Eyes red, wet around the edges. You wouldn't do this. I already did. The siren grew louder, close enough now to feel like pressure in my ears. My mother slid down into her chair, hands covering her face. Evan stood, then sat again, like his legs couldn't decide. We noticed how still everything went in that moment, how even the house seemed to listen. A heavy knock hit the door. Then another. Police, a voice called, "Open the door." My father stepped back, just one step. His hand dropped from the lock. I moved forward and turned it myself. The door swung open, cool air rushing in. An officer looked past me into the room. "Are you safe?" "I am now," I said. I walked out onto the porch without looking back. Behind me, voices overlapped. Commands, questions, the sound of cuffs. I paused at the top of the steps, just long enough to feel my hands stop shaking. Then I kept going. The paperwork didn't end quickly. It never does. Months passed in quiet pieces. Letters arrived. Calls I didn't answer stopped coming. The house I grew up in changed hands. So did the cars. Evan took a plea and probation followed. Restitution came next. I read the notices once, then filed them away. I moved into a smaller place overlooking the bay. Mornings were quieter there. No footsteps above me, no voices carrying through walls. Just coffee cooling on the counter while the fog burned off. I bought a new ledger. Black cover, clean pages, no stains. The first night. I opened it at the kitchen table. I didn't write down what anyone owed me. I didn't list losses. I wrote one number. My net worth. the money from the house, secured and untouched, my salary, the part of my life that finally belonged to me. I closed the book and felt something settle. Not relief exactly. Balance. I still think about that lunch sometimes. The way the ledger landed on the table, the confidence behind it. They thought love could be itemized, that loyalty could be enforced with ink. Rowan Pierce doesn't live inside anyone else's accounting anymore. I don't measure myself by what I can be taken for. I move through my days lighter, not because I won, but because I stepped out of the system that needed me small. If this story stays with you, let it sit. Some things don't ask to be shared loudly. I turn off the kitchen light and leave the ledger where it is, closed,